Hallo liebe Zuschauer, ich bin noch. Ich komme aus Vietnam und wohne in Hanoi. Ich lerne Deutsch seit einem Jahr und jetzt ist Deutsch für euch.
Liebe Freunde und Freundinnen, it's summer very suddenly, which means that it suddenly got very hot in Germany, and it also means that I'm kind of regretting that I ever started the trend of wearing a hat in every video. So this is today's cop-out, I think, or hope. We can all be happy with that. Regardless of what's on my head, what's on my mind, smooth transition, is still the German cases. Now, in case you missed it, I made a video on the nominative and in that on cases in general a few weeks back. If you didn't see that yet and you want a refresher, you can check it out here, as well as my video that I did years and years ago on the cases as a general overview. Today, however, I'm going to be talking about the Akkusativ. But before we get into that, let me just give a quick shout out to my partners Lingoda, who are sponsoring today's episode. Lingoda have sponsored a few of my videos in the past, and because of that, I'm sure many of you already know that they are a language school based in Berlin who are focused around online German and other language classes. So now what that means is that you have video call sessions where a teacher and a couple of students meet up and have an actual lesson. Now that is important because that is what puts Lingoda apart from other online learning language materials like, free apps which help you build vocabulary but don't really get you speaking fluently or confidently, which is exactly what Lingoda tries to do, just like an offline language school would. In order to achieve this, they offer lessons with native and qualified teachers. They are available around the clock and have structured curriculums, and they teach according to CEFR standards, so the A1 to C2 level system. So if you're mostly studying online and are kind of tired of only studying on your own, go check them out for some structured classes. You can click on the link in the description to get there, and while you do, make sure that you use the code that's also in the description and also on the screen right now to get 25% off the price for your first month if you decide to join them. Now, the Akkusativ is the case of direct objects. Now, if your native language has that concept, you already know what I'm talking about, but since we are assuming English as a starting point here, let me explain. A direct object, simply put, is the party in a sentence that is having something done to them directly. And it's no accident that the word Akkusativ looks like the word accuse, because accusare in Latin means the same as it does in English. And if you say, I accuse you, then you would be the direct object of that sentence. Less drastically, if, say, I pick up an apple, then the apple would be the direct object, which is why in German it would look like this. Ich hebe den Apfel auf. Now you may have noticed that it's der Apfel in the nominative and den Apfel in the accusative, so Apfel as a word itself apparently doesn't change. But it's article date, den Apfel. Let's look at an example where the noun itself changes too, just so it's perfectly clear. Ich sehe den Jungen versus der Junge sieht mich. So mich in this case is the accusative of ich, so I, the personal pronoun. Mich. Der Junge sieht mich. Ich sehe den Jungen. Now in most instances and for all three genders, the ending of the noun itself is not going to change in the accusative. The only exception to this is the so-called Endeklension for male words, of which Junge is one example. That topic, the Endeklension, is a bit too big to just cram it into this video now, because I think it deserves its own. Generally speaking though, ignoring the Endeklension for a moment, it works like this. Der Hund, den Hund. Die Katze, die Katze. Das Pferd, das Pferd. Now, if you remember, in the video about the nominative, I made the claim that the reason that we have the cases in the first place, and also why they're so awesome, is because they mark the function of any noun in the sentence without having to rely on that noun being in a specific place in the sentence. Well, after giving this list a quick look over, I'm sure you're now saying, well, how the hell am I supposed to know whether die Katze or das Pferd are nominative or accusative? And you're right. For example, if I were to form a sentence that doesn't even contain a male word, such as this one, die Katze sieht das Pferd, then technically speaking, I could not be 100% sure who is looking at who here, whether the cat sees the horse or the horse sees the cat. However, since German too uses certain habits, even if they're not rules in forming sentences, generally speaking, you would be perfectly fine assuming that the thing that comes first is going to be the subject. So if the sentence is Die Katze sieht das Pferd, then it's perfectly natural to assume that die Katze is the subject, so the cat sees the horse. And the last thing I want to mention is that, just so you're on top of the terminology here, verbs that trigger an accusative object, so a direct object, are called transitive verbs, transitive Verben. Now these are verbs, like to accuse, that will always indicate that A does something directly to B. I made a list with the 10 most important transitive verbs in German that you can find in the description. Also, there are some prepositions that will always trigger accusative. There's also some prepositions that can either trigger accusative or, the case that I'll be discussing in the next Grundkurs episode, the dative, depending on the context that they're in. One of these prepositions, and probably the most important example, definitely one of the most important, is the preposition in, which can occur both with accusative and dative, and that's why I made a video on it that you can also find on the little I. And that's it for today. But of course, as always, before I go, I want to point out my Patreon. These people that you are seeing scrolling by right now are my patrons, which means that these are all people who have decided to support DFE with a little monthly donation. You can click on the link in the description, the one that's on the screen right now, to get more information. But basically, if you feel like you want to support DFE financially and also want to get some rewards out of it, then you should head over to Patreon to get more info on it. What you can get from this are charts and little longer helps, like, for example, the list of prepositions, the list of verbs that I'm supplying today. And plus, beyond that, my grammar scripts, all edited with more examples, etc. So if that's something that you're interested in, then go check out my Patreon. Thanks in advance. Your random word of the week is die Lehre. Die Lehre. Not to be confused with die Lehre with an H, which means apprenticeship. Die Lehre. Und das war's. Go check out Lingoda and bis zum nächsten Mal. Tschüss!